I would love to hear from you. So connect with me on LinkedIn and message me if I can help you in any manner. Feed view of blockchain. We will first define the blockchain construct. It might seem a little bit confusing for now, but I promise by the end you will know it really well. Then we will look at our traditional banking system that we all know and use on frequent basis. And let's contrast it with blockchain. This will help us identify many subtleties that might not show up if you just look at blockchain on its own. We will then see how a transaction would flow across the blockchain end to end. This will give you a very good grasp on how you will interact with the technology and what are some of its big components. So without further ado, let's dig in. Let's take a minute to review how Wikipedia defines blockchain. So a blockchain is a continuously growing list of records called blocks, which are linked and secured using cryptography. Don't worry if you don't understand what cryptography is. What I do want you to focus on is the term records. Most people see blockchain in terms of cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin, but the records can be anything of value and not only money, like share certificates, intellectual property rights, and something similar. We will look at the case studies in section 4 on how different industries are leveraging blockchain. We will come back to blocks soon, but for now consider them as boxes that store information and are stacked up on top of each other like Lego blocks. Another important concept here is that the blocks are linked, and that's where the magic is. This concept is the backbone of why this technology is making a transformation. A loose analogy can be, imagine you have a bunch of records that you need to manage. You will typically make a spreadsheet that many people can use and update. You would either keep it somewhere on the network for everyone to access, or you will pass it around and reconcile the edits in the end. However, once you are done, that spreadsheet will still be at one location. Now this location will become a single point of failure and also a target for attack. Now consider if you had blockchain. Your server would be part of blockchain network. That list of records will be copied across all the nodes in a secure manner and will only be available to the right people. Every time someone makes a change to the records, all systems on the network will update to have the latest copy without your intervention. And anyone can access any system on the network to get the access to the data, provided they have the right level of access, and all this in a secure manner. So blockchain gave you security, flexibility, and resilience, and all this with little or no involvement from your side. Isn't that awesome? So what does all this mean in a practical context? Let's look at a transaction that we all do on a regular basis or might have done at some point in our life. On the left side here, we have a traditional banking system. Joe gets a check from jail. Joe goes to the bank to deposit the check or deposits it via a mobile app. The bank validates Joe's identity, source of funds, etc. And then the bank sends it to a clearinghouse for getting the funds that Joe is supposed to get. The clearinghouse makes a record and works with Jill's bank to transfer the funds. The problem with this approach is that it takes time and is dependent on so many intermediaries. The clearinghouse maintains a central ledger and with all the credits and debits, and so is a checkpoint. Now consider the same scenario with blockchain. Joe doesn't need to be involved at all in this scenario. Jill can send a transfer request to any node on blockchain and can transfer the money instantly. No third parties involved, and all of this is done securely. In fact, Joe and Jill don't even need to divulge their identities at all, and all they would need to transfer this for this transfer request are unique addresses. Now think of unique addresses like emails, but only in this case you can change your address whenever you want. It has to be unique for that one transaction. Isn't this pretty amazing? I hope you are starting to see why blockchain is so great and why is it going to open up so many possibilities for us. Now let's look in detail from end to end a transfer of money or anything of value between two parties, let's say Jill and Joe, on blockchain. So let's say Joe wants to send money to Jill in this case. Joe has an application called Bitcoin Wallet running on his mobile phone. Some of the iOS examples of wallets are Bread, Blockchain, Copay, and there are countless others. To be clear, you can have wallets on desktops as well. And some of the main ones are Electrum, Bitcoin Armory, or the good old Bitcoin Core. Both type of wallets, for the most part, have identical functionalities. So it's a matter of preference. Most people prefer mobile for ease of use. Once Joe accesses his wallet, he creates a transaction to authorize the transfer of money to Jill. Now, as I mentioned earlier, Joe doesn't need to know Jill's identity. So think of wallet as Joe's checkbook and the transaction as a check. Joe writes a unique address belonging to Jill on the pay to line of the check. He then signs the check using something called a private key. Now, actually, wallet basically does that for him automatically. Now, unlike traditional banking, um, blockchain operates on a public network. So, in order to make sure that only Jill can get access to the funds, Joe's wallet puts certain conditions that only Jill, or in other words, Jill's wallet, can fulfill. Joe's wallet then forwards the transaction to the blockchain network. Systems that run blockchain software are called nodes. These nodes have blocks where Joe's transaction will actually be stored, like we discussed earlier. Each node will propagate the transaction to its peers, and so the entire network will have the transaction. And hence, blockchain is called a distributed ledger. There are rules called consensus rules that define what a valid transaction looks like. So each node will independently validate the transaction that Joe created. Now, Jill's wallet is also a node and is looking for the transactions that are addressed to it. So it will pick up the transaction and give the required proof to the nodes, and the transfer of the funds will take place from Joe to Jill. And this will complete the transaction. Now, there are special type of nodes called full nodes that have a copy of the entire blockchain from the start of time, 2008. And these nodes will add this transaction to the topmost block. Now, each of these nodes can act like a clearinghouse and have the ledger. They all have the same copy of the ledger, which is very important. Now, much like a date on the check, all the transactions are automatically timestamped, and the details about the transfer between Joe and Jill's addresses is recorded on the network, so it can be audited at any point of time using one of the blockchain explorers that we will talk about later. Another important point to note here is that geographical distances do not matter here, as the wallet can connect to any node, any full node, and will get the same result. So the latencies are minimal. By this time, we should all have a good basic understanding of blockchain, how it operates, how it contrasts with current systems, how it's super secure, fast, and fault tolerant. In this section, let's peek into the 6 most fundamental elements of blockchain that made it possible for Joe to send money to Jill. Alright, so here are the 6 basic components of blockchain: transactions, blocks, wallets, nodes, mining, and address. At this point, you should be familiar with the names of most of these components. The only one we have not discussed so far is mining, and we will discuss that one in detail here. Let's start our in-depth discussion with transactions and blocks. Transactions is the first concept and refers to how two users on blockchain exchange items of value with each other. Transactions are always done with consent of parties involved, and blockchain makes sure that there is no human or system error. You can actually look at the transactions on blockchain browsers like Block Explorer or blockchain.info. Then comes the blocks. Think of blocks as a page in a large ledger where each transaction gets recorded. Blockchain makes sure that no transaction is missed. Miners keep discovering new blocks every 10 minutes or so. So I think around 144 blocks a day. That's not that very many. Every time a miner discovers a new block, he or she is rewarded with bitcoins. I think a miner currently gets around 12.5 bitcoins. And with time, this reward decreases. Currently, 1 bitcoin is around $7,585. So it's still a pretty decent reward of approximately $95,000 for each new block. Miner also charges a fee for including the transaction in the block. So if Joe wants to transfer $3 to Jill, he needs to transfer more than $3 to accommodate for that transaction fee. The fee is actually based on the size of the transaction in bytes and not on the actual amount of the transaction. This is actually a little advanced concept, so we will not go into detail here, but just remember that the transaction amount has no bearing on the fee. As we said earlier, each block is like a page in the ledger and so can record several transactions. I think a block can record 2500 separate transactions. Nodes are system running blockchain software. Your wallet is also a type of node. Another type of node is a mining node, which we will discuss shortly under the mining section. Then there are special type of nodes called full nodes. These nodes have the copy of all the transactions from the dawn of Bitcoin in 2008. Bitcoin or blockchain network is, in general, is designed as a decentralized peer-to-peer network. There is an enormous amount of machinery that is needed to maintain this global infrastructure. The network doesn't just need nodes, it requires a lot of fully functioning nodes, nodes that have the complete blockchain. The more nodes there are, the more secure the network is. This is one of the main reasons there is a plan to put Bitcoin nodes in space, and that plan has important implications for Bitcoin, and I encourage you to look it up. There were actually roughly 10,000 active nodes when I was making this recording. You can check the current status on Bitnode's website. But the availability of nodes keeps changing during a 24-hour period, and all these nodes are in sync with each other and keep exchanging inventory, and hence again the distributed ledger. Now, wallets, on the other hand, is a node or an application, if you prefer, that contains the copy of transactions that are specific to you or to that wallet. This is also your primary means of interfacing with blockchain. Now, as I mentioned earlier, some of the common examples for mobile wallets for iOS are Bread, Blockchain, and Copay. And also remember that you can have wallets on the desktops as well. And some of the main ones are Electrum, Bitcoin, Armory, or the good old Bitcoin Core. Taking our earlier analogy, if blockchain is a decentralized clearinghouse, then mining is the mechanism by which the transactions are validated and cleared, or in other words, are added to the block. So as you know, every 10 minutes a new block is discovered. You can also think of mining as taking up precious metals like gold, and with time the supply of gold diminishes. Same is the case with Bitcoin. As the time passes and more blocks are discovered, the supply of Bitcoin will diminish. During the process of mining, miners group outstanding transactions on the network into a new block and add them to blockchain. They discover the new block by solving a puzzle. That puzzle is part of Bitcoin algorithm called proof of work. The first miner to solve the puzzle announces his or her victory to the rest of the network. All the other miners immediately then stop working on that block and start trying to figure out the next one. And as a reward for work, the victorious miner gets some new Bitcoins, like I mentioned earlier. The difficulty of the puzzle changes with time. So if more blocks are discovered within 10 minutes time, the puzzle will become harder, and if less, then simpler. Now you might ask, why 10 minutes? Well, 10 minutes is roughly the amount of time that the Bitcoin developers think is necessary for a steady and diminishing flow of new coins until the maximum number of 21 million is reached. Think it's somewhere around 2140 when this target will be reached. Now all this happens without any human intervention. Isn't this pretty ingenious? The last structure we will look at is address. Your Bitcoin address, also called BTC address, is a string of 26 to 35 letters and numbers. It identifies your Bitcoin wallet. BTC addresses begin with either 1 or a 3 and are case sensitive. Very important, they are case sensitive. Now when you want to receive funds, this is the information you would provide to a person who's paying you. Your BTC address is oftentimes also called your wallet address or your public address. You can change the BTC address whenever you want. In fact, some people make them transaction specific. An easier way to think about BTC address is comparing it to an email address. You want to receive messages, so you give people your email. There are 3 methods by which you can get a Bitcoin address: setting up an account on a Bitcoin exchange, using an online wallet, and the most recommended one is using an offline wallet. Now, this offline wallet can either be a hardware based or can be a free paper wallet. Now, the reason why offline wallets are preferred is because you mitigate the risk of getting hacked by using them. By now, you should be pretty well versed with what blockchain is, how it works, how does it contrast with prevailing ways of communication, and what are some of its fundamental building blocks. This will be a relatively short section where we will try to highlight some of the blockchain features that we have learned so far and see how blockchain is actually pushing the current ways of operating out of the picture. So let's dive in. Companies spend millions of dollars each year in keeping the data safe, banking even more so. In many cases, you can even see the impact on their bottom line. All of this expenditure because of the inherent lack of current infrastructure to provide the right level of security by design. We have, as many of you would know, we have big data warehouses that store petabytes of consumer data, and that is shared with the business partners using multitudes of mechanisms. And attackers are still able to breach the company and get the data. Now, blockchain provides a promise of a secure and resilient design that has the power to return the ownership of data back to the owner. And all of this is done while maintaining total transparency and accountability. So let's look into some of the design patterns that blockchain provides and see what advantages we get by using those. So resilient design refers to the capability to meet the high availability even for the most pressing transactions, ability to withstand attacks and maintain data consistency, much like a database, and ability to prevent fraud by design. Now we learned that blockchain is decentralized and runs on peer-to-peer network. So there is no authoritative source, central governing system, or a body that can act as a single point of failure. Each node on blockchain is equally capable, and the node's geographical location does not actually matter. Now, since each node validates the transaction independently, attackers cannot send malicious transactions, causing a breach as they would in case of a traditional application. Now, the nodes also validate both the sender and the receiver before adding the transaction to the block. So the consistency and the validity of the overall blockchain remains intact. Now, I read somewhere that the global destruction caused by ransomware in 2017 was upwards of $5 billion. This is when an attacker compromises your systems, hold your data hostage, and ask you for a ransom before giving you the access to the data back. Now, in case of blockchain, because there is no central repository, this industry will die on its own. So no more blackouts or shutdowns due to ransomware. That's pretty awesome. Unlike traditional architecture, the decentralized system also ensures that even if somehow someone compromises one node and a malicious transaction is accepted by that node, the network or the blockchain network overall will not be affected, and the remaining nodes will maintain their sanctity. And this node will eventually come back to its secure state. This consensus-based approach allows blockchain to operate over a public network without a huge investment by an organization. Also, there is no implicit trust built into blockchain. Every transaction proves itself every single time. So the traditional ways of compromising the organization to get the data doesn't work here by design. Again, this is a huge design advantage. No one likes passwords, and moreover, no one likes having many passwords. Don't you wish there was a simpler, non-intrusive approach that can handle all the access for you automatically? And no, I am not talking about storing your passwords in a vault or a password manager or in your browser and have it autocomplete. I'm actually referring to doing away with those annoying passwords completely. So we can send our valuable data to any person or entity of our choice freely. Blockchain enables you to do exactly that. It uses a mechanism called keys that only you possess to transfer the data. These keys are pretty long. So you would now you would now ask me that if remembering an 8-character password is hard, how is remembering 64 characters easier? Well, the good news is, as a user, you don't need to worry about any of this. Your wallet is your best friend in this case. In addition to keeping track of your money, it also keeps your keys secure and use them whenever needed automatically. Now you must be thinking, well, if that's easier, how come nobody thought of it earlier? Wait, it gets better. We know that blockchain operates on an untrusted network, aka the internet, and the transactions happen between two addresses. The nodes are the distributed ledger and move the money transparently between the two addresses. Now you might ask, what if someone tomorrow denies that they gave the permission to transfer the money or something else of value? To avoid this scenario, each transaction is signed by the user. This creates an assurance that the user has given the permission to transfer the asset. Each node validates this permission before transferring the asset. This is a revolution when you think of in terms of intellectual property management. We will see this more clearly in the case of record label industry a little later in the case study section. But for now, I want to conclude this section by recapping what we learned. Blockchain provides new tools for architecting secure by design systems. Four main tools that we discuss are resilient design that does not have one choke point and does not rely on authoritative systems for anything. Each system is equally important and capable, and the geographies do not matter. The consensus-based network ensures that one compromised node does not impact the sanctity of the entire network and does not let a malicious transaction pass through the network. Non-human authentication is used for transfer of value, so no human errors. Traceability or non-repudiation for any transaction that gets recorded in the ledger. In the next section, we will look at some case studies where you will see these design elements being used. We learned the blockchain basics. We saw what tools or alternative approaches it provides that can radically change the way industries operate. In this section, we will see examples from three different areas on how blockchain is being utilized by that industry. It's going to be pretty exciting stuff. So let's check it out. Smart contracts. They were first proposed by Nick Szabo, who coined the term in 1994, I think. He is a computer scientist, a legal scholar, a cryptographer known for his research in digital contracts and digital currency. In 1998, he designed a mechanism for a decentralized digital currency. He called it Bitgold. Bitgold, I don't think went anywhere. I don't think it was ever implemented, but it has been called a direct precursor to the Bitcoin architecture. And although Szabo has denied on many occasions, people still speculate that he is Satoshi Nakamoto, the designer of Bitcoin. Anyways, pretty visionary guy. Anyways, so smart contracts are named smart contracts because you can write these contracts and can automatically execute them when the requirements are met. So they provide some advantages over traditional contracts, like the anonymity of the parties to execute as the contract itself is governed by a code. Now these rules are enforceable if the party doesn't meet the requirements on a predefined date, and they maintain the transparency by reviewing the activity related to the contract. Now the most important thing here is that there is no middleman involved in this contract. It's all pre-programmed and self-enforceable. Consider crowdfunding, for example. Imagine building a Kickstarter-like crowdfunding service on top of Ethereum, which is a cryptocurrency. Someone could set up an Ethereum smart contract that would pool money to be sent to someone else. A smart contract could be written to say, let's say, when $100,000 of currency is added to the pool, it will be sent to the recipient. Or if the $100,000 threshold hasn't been met within a month, for example, all the currency would be sent back to the original holders of the currency. Of course, this would be Ether tokens instead of US dollars in this case. And this all would happen according to a smart contract code, which automatically executes the transactions without the need of a third party to hold the money and sign off on the transaction. So, for example, if you're using Kickstarter, it would take 5% processing fee. Now, in case of a smart contract, you won't be required to pay any processing fee to any third party. Now, the Kickstarter, they're coming for you. See how blockchain is now revolutionizing the venture capital industry? Let's look at the record label industry. Now, a large part of the revenue for the music industry comes from digital recordings. Now, if you do a survey of the industry, you will find three key issues. First is that there is no single database that documents the ownership of all songs and recording copyrights. Instead, there are numerous databases, and none of them is entirely comprehensive. The ownership information can actually vary between these databases with no central authority to settle the conflicts. And with the rise of streaming services like your Spotify and Pandora, this problem has exploded as the owners now need to track every single time a track is listened to and keep track of the revenue streams in fraction of pennies. Licensing these tracks for advertisements, films, computer games also complicate this problem, and there is currently no viable system or technology that can solve it. Second problem is that the payments are slow. Any piece of recorded music contains at least two copyrights, one for the sound recording itself, and this relates to the performer, and one for the underlying words and music, and this relates to the songwriter or composer. Different organizations make payments on different schedules like annually, semi-annually, and it may take years for the royalties to reach the bank account of the right holders. And the third issue is that significant funds are paid to the wrong party, while the large pools of royalty revenue end up outside the artist's reach in something called black box, where the rightful owners of the royalty revenue cannot be accurately identified because of a lack of an industry-wide system for tying the usage to ownership. Remember, blockchain is both a network and a database, so it can be used it can be used to create a data ecosystem that contains full credits for the lyrics and recordings along with their usage terms. This information will be accessible from anywhere by anyone without requiring any central authority or configuration. A company who wanted to feature a song on its advertisement could clearly find both the terms of usage and the contact details for the relevant parties. Mycelia and UJO, I think, are the two companies that are already trying to develop such platforms. I highly encourage you to go and check them out. For the real-time payments, you can use smart contracts and send the royalties to both composers and performers. Rather than passing through a list of intermediaries, revenue from a streaming service or downloads could then be distributed automatically between the music rights holders according to agreed upon splits, and almost at the moment the track is downloaded or streamed. Such flexibility is unimaginable by any stretch of mind, even with the best technologies available today. The distributed ledger will ensure that the accurate copyright information is recorded from the start and is maintained throughout the lifecycle. So you can see here that blockchain can really help the artists get the most value for their work, which in the current scenario is super difficult. In the next case study, we will look at healthcare. US healthcare costs keep rising. We roughly spend around $10,000 per person per year on healthcare. This is insane, and a lot of this is actually due to industry overhead. To top this, the current solutions make it hard to share patients' health data, and the repeated data breaches keep happening. Patients also have relatively little control over their data, and if let's say they use several physicians that belong to different health systems, it can be immensely difficult to get the timely information to the doctors. This blows my mind as this particular industry, in my opinion, should be the most efficient of all. Also, consider the fact that there are many network-ready medical devices, such as pacemakers, that are about to hit the market or actually have hit the market. Look up Assurity MRI pacemaker, and you will see what I mean. These need to be secure. Smartwatches and heart rate monitors also carry large amount of personal data that should be secure, that should be sent securely to the right parties. As of now, these devices don't have the best security possible. So you can see that in healthcare, there are so many challenges, and so it provides a unique opportunity for blockchain. And in the next slide, let's see how some of these issues can be resolved by using blockchain. There are many reasons why you might want to give someone access to your medical data. Maybe you just moved to a new city and want to give your new doctor access to your medical history, or perhaps you want to nominate a healthcare proxy in case of an emergency, or you have a prescription sent to your pharmacy. As of now, healthcare comes from a patchwork of private companies, which means that handling of the patient data is even more fragmented. MIT researchers came up with this new way to exchange the data using smart contracts. Unlike the public blockchain that we have been talking about, the researchers suggested developing a private one that will be leveraged by all the healthcare providers, and thereby they will all be able to provide the patient data. However, in this case, the patient will be the only person who will be the owner of his or her data and can create smart contracts to release a specific data to a specific provider for a given purpose. Now take it a step further. With such a system in place, a patient could interact with a specific blockchain healthcare platform And in order to view all their claims, medical history, transactions, as well as overdue payments. As we can see here, that blockchain solved the problem for data sharing, controls, security, inefficiency, and accountability, and the list goes on by just creating a healthcare focused ledger. Now, as we progress into future, our reliance on connected medical devices like pacemakers and insulin dispensers or heart rate monitors will only increase. Blockchain-based healthcare-focused network and a ledger can streamline the secure data sharing from these devices to necessary parties. The data can also be retained securely on the network. Now, we are a little bit ways before the industry realizes the full potential of the blockchain and adopts it for the greater good. Nevertheless, though, you can still feel the tremendous potential that blockchain has in case of healthcare. I hope this course has got you excited about the possibilities that blockchain opens up in your industry and company. The case studies should have showed you how people are using this technology in somewhat unconventional ways to do things that were considered almost unsolvable. The tools that we discussed can be used to architect systems with new capabilities. That being said, let's recap what we have learned so far. So let's review some of the important concepts that we discussed during this course. We learned that all full nodes are equally capable and store the entire blockchain. Each node is also fully reachable from any other node. So blockchain is both a network and a database. We saw the use of this concept in our case studies. The idea of anything central does not exist in blockchain. It is fully decentralized, where each node operates independently. This powerful concept makes it completely fault-tolerant and secure by design. So annoyances like ransomware have no place in the blockchain world. We saw that even though you might not know the identity of a user you are dealing with, each transaction is completely authorized before it gets added to the ledger. This is an important concept to consider if you are in a heavily regulated industry, as all the transactions are completely auditable and are stored forever on the network. Even blockchain's root in security, any system based on it can be operated securely on a public network. However, there are reasons why an industry might choose to develop a private blockchain, as we saw in the case of healthcare. But regardless, the network would still be completely secure and fault tolerant without any extra spend. Pretty good stuff, right? And we have not even realized the full potential of this technology. Finally, we are at the end of this course. I would like to thank you for taking time to complete this course, and do hope that you found it informative and useful. So before we close, I wanted to suggest some next steps. Well, blockchain can be pretty complex as you start to dive deeper. The ideas you learn here in the course will help you decipher and relate other concepts. I recommend that you review Block Explorer website to see the latest transactions, see what they look like, and what are the data elements that are captured. Research on those data elements. Do the same thing for the blocks as well. So this exercise will help you materialize the concept you have learned and see how they are implemented in blockchain in flesh and blood. Research on how blockchain is being used in your industry. Participate in the local meetups to meet like-minded people. This particular one has been very helpful to me. And lastly, if there are any particular areas of blockchain that you would like to explore further, please do let me know, and I'll try to put some material together for you. My hope with this course is to reach as many people as possible, to show them how awesome this technology is, and so we can all leverage it. Doing so, I hope to reduce the barriers to entry. So I would be immensely thankful if you could help me spread the word and pass this course to others as well. Thank you again for taking this course, and bye for now.